Everybody act tough when they
It's the
up.
Boris Dirk podcast. Welcome back, everybody. We are thrilled to be joined today by a special guest who I met at the California Classic Summer League in San Francisco at the Chase Center. And that is Matt Peralta, who is a Lakers Nation writer, reporter, podder. And we're thrilled for him to be joining us. I'm joined by my co-host, Drew Semler, as always. But Matt, how you doing? Excited to have you on.
Doing well, Max. Good to see you. Nice to meet you, Drew. I'm excited to talk some Lakers basketball here in the dog days of the NBA calendar. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, you have a
Yeah.
chance right here to dethrone Sean Davis as our listeners' favorite Lakers specialist. So
Okay.
just give us your best shot. It's not a big deal.
Okay, I'm gonna try. Yeah, Sean's a tough act to follow, but I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah, and we actually, I mean, we scheduled this a little bit ago, but the timing has turned out to be
Yes.
quite fortuitous with some of the news that's come out. Obviously, Skinny Luka's been in the headlines for the last week, and then today he inked his 3 or 4 year, depending on the player option extension with the Lakers. I guess first off, what was your reaction to that and just seeing him re-sign on what was honestly a pretty team-friendly deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think the shock value of it is probably worn off because we've gotten a ton of reporting the past couple weeks that Luka seemed to be headed in the direction of signing this extension. I think today was more of a formality, but it's still exciting. I think the press conference today and just hearing him talk and even seeing him, he seems so much in better spirits. He seems happier. He obviously looks great. So I think all in all, it's genuine excitement here in the fan base. I think after this past season, a lot of people have forgotten how good Luka Doncic is as a basketball player. And so the revenge tour that I think everyone's expecting is going to be fun to watch. So, I mean, all in all, I think as a Lakers fan, today is one that you got to celebrate.
Yeah, and we just had our last episode. We were talking about players' stocks we were buying, and we were mostly focusing on like kind of under the radar guys.
Yeah.
But I just kind of had to throw Luka into that mix
Of course.
because I felt like people are forgetting that when even the sort of honestly like sad guy who was traded from Dallas to the Lakers last year, out of shape, coming off the worst injury of his career, still was a 38-8 guy with good three-point shooting, like strong efficiency because of his free throw numbers. And people are I felt like we're poo-pooing that a little bit too much based off sort of his track record in the past. But I mean, yeah, bottom line, if you're ranking guys that you want on your team for the next 4 or 5 years, he's in the top five somewhere, with Jokic and Wemby and Shea and Giannis, and that's probably the five. So bottom line is having that guy locked up is all you're looking for really as a franchise.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you security, it gives you a direction, it gives you clarity on what you can do moving forward. You've got input from your superstar now. This partnership seems to be headed in the right direction already. So, like you said, there aren't a lot of guys you'd rather have than Luka Doncic going forward. I think what's crazy to me is that I had to double check today because I thought I was crazy, but he just turned 26.
Yeah.
He is like you said, sad, out of shape, new system, new surroundings, everything. 28-8 it didn't even seem like he was trying some nights either to do that. So just the motivation factor, him being in better shape, a full off season, healthier. I think that's a really underrated point. Sky's the limit, really. I know we're going to talk about some Western Conference rankings later, but I think a lot of it's just depending on what kind of version of Luka we get this season. And the variance is pretty high. I'd say the floor is high already, but the ceiling for the Lakers can be massive depending on what version of Luka Doncic they get.
For sure. I think the Lakers had an opportunity to be like the great rebound after a bad relationship.
Yep.
Just the way things ended in Dallas. And it's a great sign for Lakers fans that it looks like it's moving in this direction, just based on the publicly available like interviews and fun we've seen JJ Redick and Luka have together talking long before they ended up on the same team here. I just have a feeling that Luka respects JJ more than any guy he's kind of reported to as an NBA player. I think he and Jason Kidd had like some real synergy, at least at one point. But yeah, I think it speaks to his respect for the franchise, not just his anger and desire to get his career back on track for Luka standards, but that he looks this good right now. There's so much negativity after that Wolves series. And I love that he's taken that and turned it into what looks like his most productive offseason in a while. It's just a really good sign for the team because, as you said, as much as there are some interesting moves around the edges for the Lakers, it will come down to which Luka shows up and which Luka responds to a midseason injury. Like, is this the shape he's in? He will stay in. Is
Mhm.
this just like sort of summer glam? We'll see. But so far, so good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I agree with basically everything there. I think that's a key point too. Is if how does he look like if he does get hurt? Does he able to maintain this? Does he fall back out of shape? I think that's a huge point too. But um, we'll see. But I'm genuinely optimistic that this is this is going to be Luka Doncic going forward. I think he understands now what it takes to win at the highest levels. I think the letdown of last season, coupled with the finals right before that one, I think trajectory's up.
Yeah, and I mentioned it was kind of a team-friendly deal. I was looking just kind of cap hit rankings of players, which I always like to do when because the numbers for NBA deals are just getting so
Massive.
astronomical
Yeah.
that just sometimes the sticker shock of a deal is you need to go look at where is this going to rank among players in the NBA, and that kind of gives
Hmm.
you a better sense of what kind of deal it is. And in the first year of his extension, 2026-27, he's going to be the 18th highest paid player in the NBA.
Bargain.
Like guys who are going to be making more than him in that year include Anthony Davis,
Yep.
Joel Embiid, Jalen Brown, Kat, Jimmy Butler, Paul George, Kawhi. Like there's a lot of guys who are worse than him and going to be on the tail end declining of their careers. They're going to be making significantly more than him. And yes, once this deal is done, he's probably going to sign an insanely massive deal as his
Yep.
next one. But for the next 3 seasons, at least, you've got him locked up on this contract, which, as far as the contracts that are going to top 5 players, should be fairly easy to build around. And yeah, I think that combined with just like the way that we're going to talk about the new ownership group a little bit as well, because that was sort of an under the radar big storyline this summer as
Hmm.
well. I continue to think that ownership is like the most overlooked and yet most important aspect
Agree.
of NBA team success. But really just seems like Luka, he values stability, he values loyalty. I think he saw with the Dallas experience how the rug can just be snatched out from any player at any time,
For sure.
and just wanted to lock up the stability and
Yeah.
sort of show that he reciprocates the loyalty as well from the Lakers. So yeah, I love it for him and I love it for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk of how teams like OKC or Orlando get a little bit screwed for drafting so many dudes they can then keep and pay more than anyone else. And like, in certain ways the CBA bootstraps not the big market teams, but just teams that draft incredibly well.
Hmm.
This is an interesting case in like the late stages of the player empowerment era, whatever you want to call it, where Luka takes the team that drafted him to a finals and a conference finals before turning 26 and gets traded against his will and will probably, Luka's great grandkids are going to be just fine. But it is really interesting that like he loses money because his team didn't want him, even though he gave them way more than they could have even dreamed of when they took him with the third pick or traded up to get him from Atlanta. So yeah, interesting wrinkle in like recent sort of CBA player empowerment talk.
I was giggling because you listed other things that he did before 26, and I was just thinking, what team would ever trade a guy like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
love this. Yeah, I love your point about the CBA stuff. I do think it's interesting. I do think to Max's point though, this relationship between superstar and franchise, I think sometimes gets overlooked, or I think we're kind of moving away from that. But Luka to me is like an old school superstar in that way, where he'll commit to a franchise that wants him and he'll work with them more.
Yeah.
That's why again, like I think the early signals or signs of this relationship or partnership between the two is really positive, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But overall, like I said, signing this extension now gives the Lakers no doubt who's going to lead them going forward, and it helps them just figure out down the line like what kind of players can we surround him with long term to help build a sustainable winner.
Yeah, and from sort of one superstar, one guy who's leading them to the other, I wanted to just touch a little bit on LeBron. And
Sure.
frankly, I've found a lot of the LeBron discourse this summer to be pretty exhausting because, like, all you really needed to see is that he opted in,
Yep.
and that, like, no, and then just like do a quick 5 minutes on the trade machine and see that nothing makes sense.
Yep.
But it's been a headline no matter what, and it seems like and I'm a LeBron fan, but I will readily admit that he is being very passive aggressive this summer in the most LeBron of ways.
Sure.
You have to think that sort of Luka showing up in this kind of shape should be kind of a not a motivating factor for LeBron, but like a reassuring factor of
Yeah.
like this is probably the best player he's ever played with. LeBron's not at his best, but this is the best player LeBron's ever played with, probably.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
him or like the first year of Wade.
Yeah.
And where do you think, where are you at on the whole LeBron situation right now? Do you feel like it's weird? Do you feel like it's just, it'll sort itself out? Or do you think there is actually some sort of like, I don't know, strife there?
So I think my take on it is that I don't think there's like any, how do I want to phrase this? I don't think there's like any actual animosity between LeBron and the franchise or Luke. I don't think there's any of that. I think it's just the natural tension that comes with being the older superstar versus now you have the young superstar in his prime that they can build around. I think it's just a little bit of, hey, like I'm still good and I think I deserve to be catered to, but it's kind of hard when the other guy is Luka Doncic, right? Like I don't think it's controversial to say Luka at this point in his career is better than LeBron where he is now. I just don't think that's even an argument. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think LeBron knows that too. He's smart. Like he's on the downswing of his career. He sees what's happening around the league. He sees who's good. He's got Luka as his teammate now. Like I think he understands like this is just the natural phase out of an older superstar, and that's literally no knock to LeBron because he is an All NBA guy. Like Trevor and I were just talking on a recent LakersNation.com podcast about if you factor in any sort of decline for LeBron, what are you talking about? Still a top 15 guy?
Right.
Borderline third all NBA, like at worst. Like that's still a top 20 guy. So it's not like LeBron's not good anymore. It's just they've got another North Star, so to speak, in Luka to build around. And I think that just creates a natural tension between the two sides. So all in all, like I don't think there's any sort of we're heading for this messy divorce. It's gonna get really ugly in the season. I just think it's LeBron understands that, hey, like I'm not the priority here anymore, but I also have to admit that skinny Luca and a better supporting cast, this is probably my best shot at a title. Like if LeBron was very serious about winning a title, he just would have opted out, signed somewhere for a veteran minimum and gone ring chasing, right? Like he could have done that if it was really just titles, but if it's a mixture of where do I want to live? I want to make as much money as I can, and I still want a chance to like compete. It was the Lakers all along. So, like you said, Max, I just don't think there was any real concern about a trade, given like who could trade for him, who has the pieces to do it, and like what return would the Lakers even want. I think all in all, this is just the best option for both sides, and eventually, I think it sorts itself out, especially if this team wins games in the regular season.
And we're barely a year removed from LeBron being the best player on that Team USA in
Yeah,
Paris, which in retrospect, like the FIBA rules, I feel like it's almost like Novak Djokovic in his late 30s on grass. Like it's just, it was a great setting for LeBron to like
yeah,
win his last Grand Slam, so to speak.
Mhm.
But we're not that far from that LeBron, which leads me to believe the way he takes care of his body, like he still
hmm
has that ceiling in a really important crunch time setting. But it is weird because I know like Max, you were talking about LeBron as like a top five when all else fails, like guy to have in the playoffs after Paris. And I told you just because of his age, I wasn't ready to get there, but that was how important he was to Team USA.
Mhm.
There's no reason to believe if he can avoid that, dangerous injury risk at his age that he can still be like an elite number two in all of the series.
Yeah, and really like when you think of the Lakers as a playoff team, it feels like they almost kind of have to follow the Nuggets model of like Luka is their Jokic,
yes,
and then LeBron is
the
like their
Jamal
Jamal
Murray.
Murray, and
Yep.
and obviously the Nuggets have like a more proven kind of two-way supporting cast.
Yep.
And we'll get sort of projecting the Lakers this year and sort of the really nice signs on one side of the ball and some of the question marks on the other. But yeah, if you have Luka at that sort of him and Jokic are 1A, 1B best offensive engines in the league
Sure.
level. And then LeBron just has to fill in his sort of playoff Jamal type of way. You can see the path there as long as you get enough contributions from supporting guys. One thing I did want to sort of touch on is, and I feel like it's been tough for LeBron, and I can understand why he may feel a little bit like, I don't know what the right word is as far as sort of not animosity, but just sort of feeling like his franchise is being taken away from him to a
Sure.
degree. Because I do feel like his whole run in LA has just been very kind of strange from a fan relationship perspective.
Sure.
Some of the management moves that have been made, the Westbrook trade, which sort of obviously was a disaster in hindsight. And yeah, I don't know if we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I'm curious what you think kind of Lakers fans' relationship with LeBron is in general. I know there's Lakers fans, there's Kobe stans, and there's
Yeah.
those are two very different things. But just wanted to throw that to you as well.
Yeah, I think I fall very much in the measured camp when comes to LeBron. Like you mentioned, when it comes to Lakers fans, there's just so many segments to them. Kobe stans, like you mentioned, the old school purists, LeBron fans, just it's a mess. But I do think like when it comes to LeBron, my just to throw it out there, my personal take on it is I greatly appreciate him. I will always be grateful for the 2020 title because he basically brought that franchise from the worst possible period in its history to back on top. So he should get credited for that, and I will always appreciate him for that. I think what's difficult though with LeBron is that I mean, I'll be honest, like I was a Kobe guy growing up, so like the LeBron Kobe thing was very much real for me. So I had to learn how to, like and appreciate him for who he was as a player before he became a Laker. So I think that adjustment kind of made it difficult. And then um, I LeBron coming as the superstar he was, already established, already won rings, all these accolades, like it was you kind of miss those moments to bond with a superstar, kind of like going through the struggles of making his way through the NBA. I think because LeBron was already established, it's hard to make that connection with him too. So I think if I had to sum it up, I think there's definitely a lot of appreciation and gratefulness for LeBron coming to LA when he didn't have to. I just think it's going to be hard to put him as like the same in the beloved category, like a Kobe, like a Shaq, like a Magic. Like he's obviously like I think from a talent perspective, arguably the greatest player to ever suit up for the Lakers, but greatest Laker period like that. I think that's a different discussion. So, I think it just kind of it depends. Like this is such a bad answer, but I think it just depends on kind of what Laker fan you identify with. If you're a Kobe
Yeah.
guy, I don't think you will ever really appreciate LeBron the way you probably should. If you are more of just a Lakers franchise fan like I am, then you come away feeling grateful and appreciative of having him on your team for however long we've had him for. And then, the Bron stands, I think that's just, it's a whole different thing, right? Like some of them hate the way that we've managed LeBron. Some of them, are happy that he got to win one more here, but I think it kind of falls all over the place, but my personal take is like I appreciate him. Like I will be sad whenever he leaves or retires. But I think of him as a Laker now. I think he'll always be a Cavalier first and foremost, but I still think of him as a Laker too. So that's kind of where I fall on that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's the longest consecutive
Yeah.
stint he's ever been in one place. His first Cleveland stint was 7 years, and then 4 and 4 in Miami and Cleveland two. And he's going into his 8th year as a Laker,
Yep.
which is kind of hard to believe.
The discourse
Yeah.
would have been nuts if he opted out and took the minimum for Cleveland or something.
Oh, that would have
Yeah.
just tarnished the legacy.
That's what I wanted to be talking about, not like how do Lakers fans feel about him. There's no way to answer, right? Like the Bronsexuals or the Bronsexuals and Kobe and the
There's a
Kobe
ton.
stands are going to ride for him forever. But yeah, let's get into tearing out the West. Way too early. August 3rd, 2025. Let's make our deepest predictions about what the next season looks like on the Western side of things.
Let's do it. Yeah. And we can save some of the sort of Lakers projection stuff for whenever we get to them in the Western Conference tiers.
Sure.
But yeah, I sort of came up with 5 categories to shove teams into. So you have the heavyweight contenders. You have people who you would not be shocked if they made the conference finals.
Sure.
Solid playoff bets, people who are kind of hopeful to make the play in, and then like bottom feeders. So let's start at the top. I'll start with you, Matt. How many teams do you think in the West are like heavyweight legit title contenders?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting one off the bat because I think there's been 3 teams that are consensus that have been going around this summer. It's going to be Oklahoma City, Denver, and Houston in whatever order you want to put them in. But funnily enough, when I was going through this exercise on my own before I hopped on here, I was thinking, how do I feel about Minnesota? That's the team that if like I could have like a 1.5 tier, I would love to put them there. But I think for the purposes of this exercise, because I'm so confident in those first 3 teams I listed, I think I just have to go with them. It's a boring answer, but I just think on paper, as of August 3rd, as we're recording this, those 3 are just to me by far and away the best teams in the West.
Yeah, Drew.
Yeah. I broke Max's rules and added a 0 tier just because I think OKC is
Sure.
OKC is the standard right now. It might sound a little bit audacious to have them in their own tier above Denver after Denver
I don't think
literally
so.
push them to the brink. But I think the only thing I'm worried about with OKC this year is the sheer force of trying to defend a title and
Oh yeah, the regression. Yeah.
how hard that's proven to be just like psychologically for teams over the years, and how hard it is to have great injury luck 2 years in a row in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But I have OKC in a 0 tier, and then as you said, I got Denver at 2 and Houston at 3. And I know we're talking more tiers than specific rankings, but I feel really good about the top 3 in that order.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
I split them up a little bit where I have the Thunder and the Nuggets in one tier, and I have Houston down a tier from there.
Okay.
And we'll get to Houston. I have some concerns still about Houston's kind of half court playoff offense.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
And I think their defense is going to be absolutely elite, like them and the Thunder, the two best defenses in the West, almost surely. And depth, I think they probably have another trade in them with a lot of the contracts they added this summer. But I really think the Nuggets, and we've touched on this on past episodes, but I think they have probably the best bench of the Jokic era, and they're
I do too.
just playoff Jamal away from being a better version of that 2023 title team. So I would have them sort of right below the Thunder. And I think the Thunder just sort of getting that monkey off their back is in terms of sort of pressure on the young guys, the battle tested nature that they're all going to have in the playoffs this year. The last team that was this young that we saw win a title was that 2015 Warriors team. And they came back the next year and went 73-9, which I've thrown out this summer, that I think I could see OKC having a similar type of season of winning 70 plus games with how many games they won last year, missing their bigs for as many games as they did.
Good point.
So OKC I'd have at the top. Also, adding second year of AJ Mitchell as a backup point guard, a little bit more playmaking. What does Topic look like as a rookie?
Yep.
And just all of the internal progression from Kaysen.
Yep.
Chet, I think, was one player before his hip injury and another player after. I'm expecting more of pre-injury Chet this year and even more consistency from J-Dub. So we agree, Thunder Nuggets at the top. I would have Rockets in sort of the conference finals contenders more than the sort of heavyweight, no doubt about it, championship contenders. Also, with how much they're going to be relying on a 37, 38-year-old Kevin Durant as their primary go-to late game scorer, I worry a little bit. And just that they won't be able to shoot quite enough with their best players, including Amen Thompson and Şengün. I just think teams might be able to scheme better for that from a defensive perspective in the playoffs. So, yes, I would have the Rockets at the top of my next tier, but below the top 2.
Okay, so I mean, sounds like we're all aligned there. The OKC thing, Drew, to your point, I also kind of sort of consider that because I think the biggest thing here is that they're so young.
Yeah.
There's going to be a ton of internal improvement, just natural, right? Like if SGA is not even MVP level, but just SGA as your constant to kind of like your solar system, right? Like this is how the entire OKC Thunder offense revolves around him, but. J-Dub's going to be better. I think you're going to get healthier and improve Chet. I think those two guys taking any sort of leap vaults their ceiling. So, funnily enough, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if their win total was around the same this year. I think the last time I checked, it's like 67.5. I wouldn't be surprised if they won fewer regular season games, but they were a better playoff team. I think that's definitely within the realm of possibilities. But I don't disagree with the Rockets point too much. I just am a big believer in the defense personally, and Amen Thompson's a favorite of mine. So if he takes any sort of leap offensively, the Rockets could get real scary real fast. But yeah, if you want to quibble where the Rockets are, like I'm in agreement. Like if you want to knock them down a peg, they'd for sure be at the top of the next year.
Yeah. So, Mr. Peralta, I went to Game 7 of the finals this year because one of my best friends lives in Tulsa.
That must have
and
been fun.
Had season tickets, amazingly priced. And he gave me his extra seat for Game 7. We went together, and on the escalator down post celebration, this is what we were talking about. I mean, the whole team is coming back, and you add Topic to the mix, another year of maturity for AJ Mitchell. There's just no reason they should, be less dangerous in the playoffs. And I think OKC and Houston, of the real contenders in the West, are the two teams that are set to benefit just from its returnees simply being a year older. And
Yep.
that's why Houston made it into the heavyweight contender tier for me. Just Amen Thompson, Şengün, Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, Reed Shepard. These are all guys that should be significantly better than last year. One of them regresses, sure, but like the majority of that group is going to grow. Max, let's not make KD 38 just yet. All right. He turns 37 in September.
My fault. Hand up.
If
Sorry,
KD
sorry.
if KD is just about who he's been the last 2 years in Phoenix, then he is the perfect bucket getter to add to this really athletic, deep team that was super clunky in late game half court offense. So I'm betting on KD just because we've seen how well these incredibly dedicated Hall of Famers age these days. I'm betting on him to be close to that the last couple of years in Phoenix. And that's why they're my third favorite bet in the West. And I had them in this tier. And like on the simplest level, Dillon Brooks and Jalen Green out, Kevin Durant and Dorian Finney-Smith in. That's a really, really good two-man swap in addition to all the young guys that should improve internally. And then with Denver, I'm on the side that Jamal Murray was slightly underratedly himself in that OKC series. It wasn't the all-time, nuclear Jamal Murray we've seen in playoff settings that we saw in the bubble going toe-to-toe with Donovan Mitchell. But when you consider the fact that OKC had 4 or 5 all-defense caliber menaces to throw at him all series, and he was still extremely poised in crunch time. He hit a couple of big-time shots in that series. Christian Brown is a dude. We can now accept this. Cam Johnson in, MPJ out, Peyton Watson a year older and more polished offensively, hopefully. Jokic still in his prime, but with Valanciunas to take a couple of bumps for him throughout the year. Deron Holmes is finally ready. Maybe he cracks the rotation. Yep. And then you've got the Bruce Brown wild card, and anything he gives them is gravy. So I'm excited for Denver. I'm excited for them to not feel as much like peak LeBron, just like trying to drag a not so great roster against an unfair Golden State setup. I think Jokic has his best chance in a couple of years here.
Yeah, any guard going against OKC, I feel like has to be graded on a curve almost where, I mean, they made Anthony Edwards look just absolutely silly in the Western Conference Finals.
Sure did, man.
Like just holding your own as a player under 6'5" against the Thunder has to count for something. And Murray did that. All
right. Let's talk. So this next tier, Max, you called them the Western Conference Finals contenders. I know we're tier first in this episode, but I do think the most interesting question so far is like, just who do you have as your fourth favorite team in the West? So Matthew, who do you got?
Yeah, I think I spoiled it a little bit earlier because I was talking about the top 3 or 4 teams. So I'm going to go with Minnesota. I do dislike losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker. That one's a tough one for them, but I think I think my biggest question with Minnesota is just how much do you trust their young guys to take a leap? Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham are going to have some major roles off the bench this season, I think. Obviously, keeping Naz Reid, huge for them. Jaden McDaniels, can he become more of a dynamic guy on the ball this season next to Ant? Ant, just he needs to take another leap as another playmaker. I thought we saw that last season, but now that he's seen an OKC defense, he's got to have to figure out some ways to get around that. So that's another one. And then you got older Mike Conley, too. So I think I think Minnesota's floor is very safe just because defensively they're going to be elite. Just no way around it with the athletes and size that they have at every position. But I do wonder just how much are their young guys going to be able to step up next season in larger roles, especially come the playoffs. I'm not doubting it necessarily because I think their starting 5 is still really good, but I do have some concerns there. So that's to me what was the ultimate tiebreaker between Houston and them, or at least in terms of making that top tier in the Western Conference.
Yeah. Wolves I had 4th as well. And in this I had Rockets and then Wolves in this Western Conference Finals contenders. And their team I see as their floor being very high, but I don't necessarily see the breakthrough ceiling for them in terms of kind of winning the West or winning the championship. I think they are, and I've mentioned this on another pod, but I think they're one team when the opposing team doesn't have a rim protector and another team when they do. Because when we've seen them in the playoffs in the past, Edwards just looks completely unstoppable against teams that don't have rim protection. Like,
Oh, for sure.
against the Lakers in the playoffs
Saw
last
it all the
year,
time. Yep.
he looked like Michael Jordan. Against the Nuggets, when he's played them both in the regular season and the postseason in the past, like they have no answers for him when he can just get to the basket and no one's waiting there to make his finishes difficult. So it's very path dependent for the Wolves. I could see them having a similar year where they upset a couple teams en route to the conference finals. But I do have a hard time seeing them making the strides necessary to beat OKC. I think they'd have a lot of trouble with Houston. I think they'd have a lot of trouble with the Clippers with the size and rim protection that they have as well. So
Sure.
they're a little bit kind of path dependent, and I do worry about kind of their overall passing ability, which is something I've been concerned about with them for
sure.
a couple years. They've overachieved no matter, like, sort of nonetheless, but with Conley getting a year older, and he looked like much more of a liability this past playoffs compared to in the past, and he's sneaky been probably one of their more important players
For sure he
in,
has.
in
Yeah.
their turnaround since they swapped out D'Lo for him. So worried about that. And then, but I also think that'll be counteracted a little bit by just more cohesion between Randall, Edwards, DiVincenzo in their second year together. And you mentioned growth from the young guys. Terrence Shannon, I like a lot. Dillingham, I have a little less faith in. Just he's so small. I worry that in a playoff setting, he's just going to be too easy to pick on, and he's not efficient enough as a scorer to kind of hang on the offensive end, at least at this point in his career. But I would have the Wolves 4. I would have the Clips 5. But Drew, I'm curious who you have 4.
Yeah, so this was a 3-team tier for me. Clips 4, Wolves 5, Lakers 6.
Same tiers
And
for me.
yeah,
Interesting.
so with the Wolves, echo what's been said. Conley's 38 now, clearly on the decline. Terrence Shannon shows a lot of flashes. I think there's a lot for Jaden McDaniels to get better at offensively that he's flashed. I loved their first round pick, Joan Berenger. I thought he was a top 10 guy in this draft, but I don't expect him to make a big difference as a rookie. And when it comes to Ant, who turns 24 on Tuesday, we share a birthday. Shout out August 5th. Leo's
Happy early birthday, guys.
Yeah. There's always the chance, right, at Ant's age that he takes a leap like into like top 5 guy in the league status. I don't think it's ever going to quite happen, because if we look at Jokic, SGA, Luka, like the top 3 right now, and Giannis is always hovering in that territory as well. Jokic, SGA, and Luka specifically just showed at least early flashes of genius processing, like playoff supercomputer potential. It was a little bit slower, obviously, for SGA than Luka and Jokic, who Jokic was a little older, but I just don't see Edwards as like a genius processor. And I'm like, how much can you elevate just being a great shooter and super athlete and rim attacker? He's an incredible player. I just wonder if he has sort of like the mental ceiling to reach the heights of those guys at the very top. And then when you talk about Giannis, like he's just in one of the most physically dominant bodies with some athletic traits we've almost never seen before. So yeah, that's why I'm with Max on just a slightly lower ceiling for the Wolves than you might expect for a team that's made back-to-back conference finals. But they've also proven me wrong 2 years in a row. You know, both these last 2 years, they've gone further than I had them going, and maybe they'll do it again just because they seem to play with a lot of confidence and toughness in the playoffs. But that OKC series was about as depressing a way to go out as a conference finals appearance can go. And that's coming from a Blazers fan who watched the Dubs rip our hearts out in 2019.
Yeah. Let's talk Clips, who I would have at 5, and Drew, you said you had at 4. This is, I feel like the Clipsiest Clippers team that there's ever been, in terms of like, they're even deeper. They've got even more kind of Expendables style, like NBA veteran talent, where they can throw out the all-unk lineup of Chris Paul, James Harden, Bradley Beal, Kawhi, and Brooke Lopez.
Batum.
Batum, yeah. They are crazy deep. They're crazy talented. Some of the off-season photos that have been circulating of James Harden are mildly concerning, but we'll just assume he's wearing a towel wrap like he was in Houston.
Yeah. Honestly, I saw a Jokic picture that concerned me just a little bit. I guess I should never worry about his conditioning, but Yeah, we can't overreact to the pictures. Okay, shirts do weird things.
Yeah. So
Shirts do weird things.
I ended up putting the Clips at 5 just because the talent on paper is
Yes.
so overwhelming. But I just can't quite get super high on them because Kawhi is healthy, but they did just have the if Kawhi is healthy postseason, and it ended with them losing to an inferior team in the first round, albeit with the best player in the world who makes magical things happen in the playoffs. But
Yep.
for years, it's been with the Clippers. Well, they just need Kawhi healthy in the playoffs, and let's see what happens. They finally had it, and they went out in round one against an opponent that was as the playoffs were approaching, most people were betting on the Clippers in that series. So they can definitely win the West, but I also think of all the teams we've mentioned so far, including the Lakers, I think they might be the most likely team to lose in round one just because of the health concerns and all that. So, Matt, did you have the Clips at 5 or were they lower for you?
So the coin flip, this between the two LA teams for me was the coin flip here. That's why I think all three of our teams in this tier are Minnesota and both LA teams, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of eye of the beholder because I think for me as a Lakers fan, being so close to the Clippers team just by proximity and just the nature of the market, I don't know. I think for me, it's just every season they look good on paper, and we say this every single year since they've gotten Kawhi. So I think maybe I'm just a little bit more pessimistic because again, like I don't disagree with anything you guys have said. Like on paper, this is a good roster. Last year, they probably overachieved more than they thought they would. And so I'm not discounting that. I think they're legitimately like gonna make the playoffs. I just think that if I'm betting between the two LA teams, like funnily enough, like we made the jokes for a long time here that the Lakers were the geriatric team. Now it's the Clippers that are. So I think that's important. I just don't know if the regular season record's going to hold up because of how many old guys they've got. And the Lakers just have the brand spanking new 26-year-old superstar who's in the best shape of his life. So that's to me was a tiebreaker. It was just a matter of which roster do I believe in more to get through an 82 game regular season. I think, funnily enough, I think it's the Lakers right now. But if you told me, like, I don't know, 4 months from now that the Clippers are killing it and they're like in that top mix, like, I wouldn't be surprised. But I think just as of today, I would have the Lakers a smidge over the Clippers. So I've got Wolves 4, Lakers 5, Clippers 6.
We've still got Ty Lue as the coach. That's always a slight boost, especially when it
Sure.
comes to the playoffs. The Norm Powell loss is real. I think at this point, Bradley Beal is a downgrade at that position for sure. But I love the John Collins get. I
Me
mean,
too.
this guy hasn't played relevant basketball in a couple of years now, but all he did last year was average like 19 and 8 and 2, 53, 40, 85. And I do think that John Collins is more than a viable rotation player in the NBA. I think he might still be a low end starter who has the sort of upside as like a lob catcher and outside shooter that he showed in Atlanta in the early years when he looked like he might actually turn into a pretty valuable asset. But again, Kawhi, 34 years old with the Kawhi injury history. Harden, 36 with an injury history and a lot of bad playoff moments. Batum's 36. Chris Paul is 40. Brooke Lopez is 37, even though he's behind Zubats now. So he's probably perfectly qualified for his role. And then Bradley Beal's 32 with the injury history of a 36-year-old. So I love all of these additions in a vacuum. They all felt like the right move, and I think they took exactly what was available to them and made the most of this summer.
Yeah.
But altogether, this team looks destined to run out of gas or suffer another untimely injury to one of its top guys. So I'm so ambivalent. I have them as the fourth team on my list here because the depth is really interesting to me. But then when we talk about like upper limit, like how good can this get? I just can't see it getting much better than the conference finals. I did have them beating Denver in round one. And I think, without a little bit of Aaron Gordon magic, like I might have been right in that pick.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think this team is significantly better built for the playoffs than they were in 2025.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And yeah, the sort of rim protection double whammy they have between Zubats and Brooke Lopez off the bench, like they're going to be an awesome defensive team, and
Yeah.
they just need to, assuming that they allocate their minutes in the way that I think they're going to, and you don't get a lot of kind of Harden, Beal, and some of their other weaker, older defenders at the same time. But they have crazy defensive talent between obviously Kawhi, Zubats, Batum is still a really good defender at this point. Derek Jones, Chris Dunn, like the list goes on. So with the Lakers, I think the path is clear for me that they're going to be an elite offense.
Sure. Yep.
I think with Ayton and Drew is our resident like Aytonologist as a Portland Trailblazer fan.
Yep.
So with Ayton, Luka's going to get sort of his dive man, and Ayton obviously well documented. He prefers to shoot his little 12-footer, but he can be made into a dive man as Chris Paul did in Phoenix. So
Yeah.
having a real big there and spacing around him between LeBron attacking from the weak side, you've got Reeves as a shooter, Rui, Smart's a little streaky, but Laravia's a really good shooter. I just think that Luka's been sort of an elite offense unto himself a lot of times in his career, and they've got enough sort of offensive talent around him to make this into elite offense. The question for them is just, can their defense be average to slightly above average?
Yeah.
And that's where things start to get a little bit rickety. You're relying a lot on Marcus Smart to do some heavy lifting on the perimeter there.
Yes.
Matt, I don't know if you have any thoughts just on like the pathway for them defensively, and yeah.
Yeah, so that I'm glad you brought that up, because that is to me that's kind of what's hindering the Lakers' chances of cracking that, heavyweight title contender tier. To me, is that their point of attack defense to me is still lackluster at best. When Jared Vanderbilt is still probably your best guy on guards, I think you've got an issue. I know Marcus Smart's got the reputation as a defensive player of the year guy, but I think at this stage of his career, after all the injuries and just given the way that NBA teams are moving towards smaller guys, like he's guarding mostly twos and threes, and I would even argue fours in most matchups. I don't think you've got a guy on the Lakers currently that's a two-way guy, at least, that can stick with those quicker penetrative guards on the perimeter. I think the Lakers are still missing that dude. If I would assume in the starting lineup, it's probably going to be Austin Reeves doing that. Who again, like not bad, but not the guy that you'd probably think of as like an all defense guy. So I've got some concerns there. So I've been talking about this a lot. I don't think the Lakers are done necessarily yet. I think they do this every season, is they wait till the trade deadline or just about to find the piece that they're looking for, and then kind of go from there. So some of the 3-and-D guys that we kind of heard this offseason, I wouldn't be surprised if they go back to revisit. Andrew Wiggins is obviously the big one that I know they kind of poo-pooed, but I think that archetype of player could really fix the hole on the Lakers in terms of point of attack. But offensively, man, like the sky's the limit. DeAndre Ayton is probably the best big man that Luka's ever played with, if you really want to sit down and think about that for a hot sec. I'm not saying defensively, just offensively, he's the most versatile. He's a good dive man, like you mentioned. He's got the pick and pop from the 12 to 15 footer range. He's got good hands. He's got a nice floater, so he can score in a variety of ways. So I think he'll keep defenses honest in the middle of the paint. I think you'll see some better 3-point shooting. I mean, you're going to get better quality looks just playing next to LeBron and Luka Doncic. Austin Reeves as your third best playmaker is pretty insane to me. So there's a lot of avenues to the Lakers offense being a top 10 unit, and I might even dare say top 5 if we're really going to get an MVP version of Luka. So that to me is why, again, like you could tell me a lot of different things with the Lakers, and I'd probably believe you. The variance is pretty high with this group. So I think going back to our conversation about which LA team do you prefer, I think like the Clippers have by far the highest floor defensively and because of their level of talent and depth. But if you're talking in a playoff series, who could win me that? I think you have to pick the Lakers. So I think that's the lens I'm looking at it from. And I think that's why, again, depending on how you look at the matchups of rock, paper, scissors, all of these teams can be grouped, similarly.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an NBA coach better suited to resent DeAndre Ayton than JJ Redick. According to my sources in Portland, Ayton has cared significantly more about video games and booty calls the last couple of years than winning basketball games. But the last time that Ayton felt like a real winning important piece was when he had a chance to play high pressure basketball in Phoenix. So
Sure.
The talent is still there. He's still super young. I hope that he, commits to the winning, the little stuff like he did a few years ago, because it was really up and down in Portland to the point that the Blazers just started making up fake injuries because they didn't want him around their young guys. Like there were a lot of weeks of this past season when DeAndre Ayton's like day-to-day bruised finger became like, oh, he's out for 2 months now. And as it turned out, Portland was willing to pay him to leave, which is really unfortunate for our team. But I really love the Jake LaRavia ad. I think Jake LaRavia has a chance to be a connective Swiss Army knife and
He's
a real
good,
bargain to get him 2 for $12 million. I loved that for them. And again, I think Zach Lowe made a really smart point that sure, Ayton doesn't shoot free throws. Sure, he hasn't been a lob threat really the last couple of years. He's been more of a finesse big to everyone's chagrin who watches him. Like he's like the 2K big who like accidentally does like the jumper animation 6 feet from the basket.
Yeah.
It's so true.
It's accurate.
But I do think Luka is just such a wizard that he can kind of just sort of push Ayton into the right offensive situations. And Ayton still has the leaping ability. He still has good hands. He still has the ability to finish with authority when motivated, like when there's a fire lit under his ass. So I think his relationship with JJ Redick could go one of two ways. But hey, Luka had, just a few months in this Lakers system with, their front office and their coaching staff and decided he wanted to take his career a little bit more seriously. So maybe there's a similar growing up moment that's coming for DeAndre Ayton. And obviously they're not asking that much of him. Just, his assignment now is fairly simple, and his path to making, another couple $100 million in the NBA is not that obscure. It's just, he's seen what works for bigs around Luka, and then he'll also have chances like Rui in this offense to like create a bucket here and there, depending on who's on the floor. So I'm just fascinated. It's a really interesting combination of player and coach, player and city, and a moment in his career where it feels like it could go all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, let me just quickly say, like, I will be the first one to admit that if you feel like your season hinges on what version of DeAndre Ayton you get, it's probably not a very good place to be in. But with that being said, like, I'm gonna take the half glass full route here. You said it. If this is not the stop where he revitalizes his career, it's not going to be anywhere, because what situation will ever be better than walking into a starting five with LeBron James and Luka Doncic as your main playmakers? Like, he will walk into like 15 to 16 points a night just by virtue of being a 7-foot big man that knows how to roll to the rim, has good hands, can shoot jumpers. Like, to me, the numbers will be there. The really what the question mark is he going to be engaged offensively? Are we going to see the Phoenix playoff version of Ayton? If we get that guy for most of the regular season, the Lakers to me are very good. If he is not that, and we see more of the Portland version of DeAndre Ayton, I think we're going to be in trouble. So as a Lakers guy, I will be the first one to tell you it's a very tenuous position to be in, but it's kind of the one that we're in, and we just have to hope for the best.
Yeah.
And for $8 million, it's a no-brainer for the record. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to go for you guys. It's a fork in the road for this player, but that deal is a must sign for them.
For sure. As far in terms of upside and what was available in the market, like it's there was no way that the Lakers were going to get any sort of upside center like DeAndre Ayton with that money.
Yeah. All right. I want to move on to the next tier, and we can move more quickly as we're sort of getting further down the rankings here.
I'm not really too, like, spoiler alert, I'm not too excited to talk about the Pelicans.
Oh no, yeah.
So
just quick question. Also, spoiler alert, Max's last year, he called waste management. And I really don't want to spend more than 2 minutes total on the 4 teams I have in that tier. But
I think I also have 4.
Yeah. So the next category you gave us, Max, this tier is solid playoff bets. I have 2 teams in this tier. I have Golden State and San Antonio. And I just want to say something. I'm going to ruin Max's bit here. He texted me before the pod that one team was giving him a lot of problems. He just wasn't sure where they fall here. It's got to be San Antonio. Is it San Antonio?
No, it was the Warriors, actually. I was curious.
Interesting.
I was curious if either of you were tempted to put them in the tier above of the Western Conference Finals contenders.
No.
Okay.
No.
The only reason for me, and I had them so far we're 8. We have the same top 8, like slightly different order, but I had Warriors 7, Spurs 8. And then I also included the Grizzlies and the Mavs in this tier as 9 and 10.
Okay.
Even though it's weird, I feel like I'm a little lower on the Mavs in consensus, but maybe I'm not.
I think you
But
and I are probably about the same. I'm excited to talk
yeah,
about them. Yeah.
10th. But
Yeah.
the Warriors I found the hardest to rank because the vibes are very blah because of the sort of Kuminga saga just
Yep.
not being resolved. The fact that they've made literally zero offseason moves, in large part due to the Kuminga situation not being resolved. It seems like they're going to get Al Horford. Seems like they're going to get DeAnthony Melton as well and bring back GP2. So
Yep.
when you look at them, it feels like that Warriors Rockets playoff series really is as sort of, as they say, like a Rorschach test where you can look at it and see whatever you want. Where,
Yeah. Yep.
like, do you look at it and see the Rockets as like this really feisty young defensive lockdown team that the Warriors were able to beat, and that sort of stretch after they got Jimmy Butler where they're top 5 in net rating, one of the best defenses, drawing a ton of fouls, like they are that elite team and they were just like a Steph Curry pulled hamstring away from another conference finals? Or do you look at it and say, well, this Rockets team can't score in the half court in the playoffs. They beat up the Warriors with potentially this kind of gimmicky lineup of Steven Adams and Şengün, and the Warriors had no answer for this sort of large, just like assault of rebounding and physicality. And I just couldn't decide what to make of it. Like, if you have a very high opinion of the Rockets and you think, well, the Warriors beat them and they had all these great metrics after trading for Jimmy Butler, and Steph looked like the old Steph as soon as they got another like star in the building, then I have a hard time seeing why that's not going to continue next year when you are sort of getting that for a full season. Yes, the big three is getting older with Draymond as well, but you get that. You get Horford in there to sort of add a little bit more size to help against teams like Denver and Houston. But then, it's also really concerning that when they needed Jimmy Butler to step up in the playoffs, he was just couldn't do it, whether because of his injury or because he's too old or whatever the reason.
Yeah.
So I ended up keeping them in this solid playoff bets tier, but I was curious if either of you were going to put them in the tier above just because of the run they'd gone on once they got Jimmy.
I mean I think I see what you're saying. I just think like in terms of I don't even think it's necessarily even the Warriors' fault necessarily. Like if I think any other year, if they had just stayed the same, they probably would have been closer to that tier for me. But just given that everyone else in the Western Conference has gotten better and they're all younger too. Like I think that's important to mention. Like you brought up their big three is getting a lot older. I mean, that's not changing anytime soon. And I just have a hard time believing Steph Curry is going to be Steph Curry every single night in the regular season. So to me, from a regular season perspective, I can't see them finishing above 7th personally as of right now. Depends on what happens with the Kuminga stuff and what they get back for him. And we're going to pencil in Horford and Melton. But I still have a lot of doubts about the Warriors. Like, don't get me wrong. Like they to me scream feisty playoff team, but I just can't get anywhere above that.
Yeah, here's a special stat from the Elias Sports Bureau. The big three in Golden State, 108 combined years old. 108. and Max, I'm really glad you mentioned Jimmy, like when he had to be the lone wolf a little bit for them offensively. That really scared me. It made me wonder, like, is he looked like a boxer who was just significantly down the line from like prime, like fighting deep into round
Mike Tyson
9
against Jake Paul.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Not quite that bad.
Maybe not that sad. Yeah.
But who's Jake Paul in that example? I guess Amen Thompson maybe. But
yeah, we'll throw that away.
To your point about that Golden State Houston series, I think a lot of that was Jalen Green's lack of self-awareness. Houston definitely lacked some sort of late game offensive lubricant and bucket getting, but I think that they are going to be significantly better. I also continue to, when in doubt, side with the young athletic team because the game is just so physically demanding and up and down now. I feel like there are fewer 2014 San Antonio Spurs vibes at this point. Some teams just have that magical infrastructure and are able to be greater than the sum of their parts, especially with guys deep into their 30s. This doesn't feel like that kind of team to me. I'm one of the biggest pods fans you're going to find, Brandon Pajemski. Not podcasts. I'm over podcasts, but I just, this team is too old in my mind. For me, it wasn't about whether they might belong in the tier above, but whether San Antonio jumps them and is leading this solid playoff bet tier for me. Because sort of like Houston, sort of like OKC, San Antonio seems like that next team up in terms of young, athletic, just throwing wings and length at you at every position. De'Aaron Fox is probably a little bit underrated at this point, just because like he's had some bottom of the playoff bracket play-in moments that I really respect, especially when he doesn't have to be the best guy on his team. But at the end of the day, when we talk about San Antonio, it's first and foremost that I thought Wemby was a top 5 player in the league when healthy last year, and I think if everything goes according to plan, if Wemby can stay healthy, which will always scare me with that body, whether or not the deep vein thrombosis has to do with the shape of his body, I'll always be scared about his durability. I think he has a chance to get MVP votes this year. That's how good he was.
Sure.
That's how massive he seems to be, how massively he improves leap to leap. And then we can talk about, sort of the embarrassment of riches in terms of young athletes they throw at you elsewhere. But I believe in this. I believe this team is a solid playoff bet and has a chance to leapfrog the Warriors because there's a good chance they have a top 5, 6, 7 player in the league right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt, did you have the Spurs at 8 as well, or did you have someone else there?
Nope, I had the Spurs. I think they're the most fun team to try to project because I think like I guess for me, like it's a very delicate balance of this young collective talent that is going to be good at some point, if not already good. But there's also the chance that they need another year or two to really gel and click. So I didn't want to be too overzealous with my pick, but I think to Drew's point, I am just a big Wemby believer. I like the trio of guards that they've got in Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper. Who am I missing off the top?
De'Aaron
3?
Fox.
Oh my God, De'Aaron Fox. Thank you. I love those 3. Their front court solid. I think the Cornette Kelly Olynyk signings are kind of underrated because they're going to have a ton of size and shooting at all times. So I think the Spurs offense has massive upside here. You've got a downhill guard in De'Aaron Fox who's going to be quick and break down defenses. You've got Wembanyama who is just he's going to break offenses and the geometry of the floor every time he's on the floor. It's hard for me not to feel optimistic about the Spurs. They do scream very young team though, so I would not be surprised if they got to like the play-in tournament and were ousted in a game. I think that's a reasonable expectation. But if you told me they just outright finish as like, they win the play-in they win the play-in tournament as a 7 seed or they even outright make it as a 6 seed, like I think you could talk me into it. Just again, when you've got a singular talent like Victor Wembanyama, the ceiling for your team is going to be astronomical compared to other teams.
Yeah, they're the most intriguing team in the league to me. Like I've been sort of going through and trying to think about best defenses in the league, best offenses in the league. I have a hard time figuring out which side of the ball they're going to be. I feel like they're going to be better on defense just because they have Wemby, but also they do have all this intriguing offensive talent. And I think the Fox Wemby 2-man game has the potential to be really dangerous. But then at the same time, I also don't love the way that some of their pieces fit together. Like the Fox, Castle, Harper fit is a little strange. Those 3. I worry a little bit if they have enough shooting to be a really good offense between, Fox has gotten better, but he's still not like a great shooter. Castle's not a good, Castle's not a good shooter. Harper I think is going to take some time to become a good shooter. He's not one at the moment. Sohan. So you're relying a lot on Vassell, Barnes, Olynyk, Wemby to be your 3-point shooting. So yeah, they're sort of clearly behind the Warriors, I think, but they do have that wild card potential of Wemby just like taking the league by storm this year. So that's why I had to put him at 8.
He is the centerfold, but I'm higher on, I think, everything else going on in San Antonio too. Like I think there's a decent chance Castle is the Amen Thompson second year leap of this year, and
Sure.
very different players. But like I had Castle first in his class. I really believe in him. I'm open to an argument that he's the second most important prospect on the team, and that's no disrespect to Dylan Harper. I just love
right now.
I love Steph Castle's like stop-start game. I love his bend on drives. And then obviously he's flashed like two-way stuff. He was almost like a defense first prospect with how he guarded at UConn. But I think this is kind of how I felt about Houston going into last year. I had Houston making the playoffs. I wasn't bold enough to say they had a chance to really make some noise in the playoffs, which they almost did. If we're wrong about San Antonio here, and it is more of a minor leap, and they're kind of in the play-in, and then it's 2 years from now that they are a solid playoff bet, I think it'll be because if you look at like the advanced stats last year, Chris Paul was their second most important player in terms of contribution to winning, like all the deep, box
Yeah.
plus minus stuff. He was really valuable and super durable for them for that age. So they don't have him anymore. They don't have like the Steven Adams, Fred VanVleet, like category of adults in the room, even Dylan Brooks, even though he's volatile. So that's the risk we're taking here, is that this team is just still really young. Max mentioned the lack of shooting, but there are just so many guys that could pop that I think there's a solid chance this becomes an exhausting regular season team to try and beat. Especially because like with their young legs, they're going to do better on back to backs, all the sort of gnarly quirks of the regular season. This team is sort of built to brave those.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. I also had the Grizzlies in solid playoff bets. I think they're kind of a depressing team and kind of boring, but I do think they just have displayed a certain level of like regular season excellence, and they're deep, and they lost Desmond Bane, and I think they're probably going to be the 9 seed, and it's not a particularly exciting time, but I do think that they're still going to be solid.
Yeah, I mean, I have Memphis in the next tier that we're going to talk about.
Okay,
so.
yeah. We can speed through sort of the play-in hopefuls. I had 5 teams in this tier, and if you throw Grizzlies in there, that's 6, because I just think, spoiler alert, the Jazz are so much worse than everybody else in this conference.
Hey, shout out Walter Clayton Jr., best prospect on the team.
Yeah, the Jazz we're probably not going to talk about the Jazz. I think they might challenge for the worst conference record of all time. I don't know what that number is, but I could see them going like 3-39 in the West or something like that. Anyways, play-in hopefuls. I don't know if any of you guys can each like pick one that really interests you from this batch. I'll talk about Dallas because I do think they're being a little bit overrated, because there's a good chance Kyrie like doesn't play at all this year or doesn't come back until really late in the year.
I would expect that. Yeah.
Yeah. But they are very interesting just in sort of the defensive lineups they can throw out, the sort of consolidation trade potential that they have. They have so many guys under contract between Washington, Gafford, Lively. They all play the same position also. Anthony Davis. Cooper Flagg's going to be like their shooting guard. It's a very weird team. But I do think their defense has like real elite potential. I just think their offense could really struggle to score until Kyrie comes back. So there's a lot of people, I feel like, pushing Dallas playoff agendas, which I don't necessarily see, but I do think they'll at least be fun and interesting, but I'd put them 10.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement there. Like, I love Cooper Flag. I think that guy's a stud, but I think him as your primary initiator for an entire season is just not going to go as well as people might think, even though the idea is very tantalizing. Like, there's been so much like, oh, Giannis at point guard, Cooper Flag doing the same. And like, I think we have to remember when Giannis was doing that initially, he was bad. So I would expect a lot of the same for Cooper, and that's not a knock. That's just not going to be his game. He is very much a guy as a secondary creator, playmaker to me, not so much as a primary dude, but hey, man, these reps are going to be valuable for him. So great. Defensively, the Mavs are going to be good. I think that's why they're going to win games just on the back of their defense and their front line. But offensively, they're going to struggle. And I just kind of think that's the book on the Mavericks this season.
Yeah, I had the Mavs at 11. I saw AD just had surgery for a detached retina. I kind of have a detached retina just looking at some of the teams at the bottom of this list. But I agree. I expect them to be super cautious with Kyrie at age 33 coming off a torn ACL. But I almost didn't even want to rank Dallas because there are just so many factors that we can't really predict at this moment. Like, for instance, if they're like a 500 team at the All-Star break or at the trade deadline, like, which path do they decide to take this year? There's a lot of pressure on them to be good soon, especially if Luka stays skinny. I know Nico Harrison wants this team to contend, but I think Kyrie had his ACL surgery in March. It's just unlikely that he is going to be playoff Kyrie in time for this team, if they're even there in the standings. So I had Dallas at 11, Sacramento at 10, Memphis at 9, Sacramento is so blah. We
I,
both,
I,
Max and I both love Devin Carter and Nick Clifford.
me
Like,
too. Free them, please.
there's some positive stuff going on in Sacramento, and they probably aren't going to suck as much as it felt like they would, like just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and Keegan Murray, we're still waiting for him to start growing again, because I really think that there's a ceiling to Keegan Murray that he might not be able to find in Sacramento.
Sure.
With Memphis, that I've been let down by Memphis a lot the last couple of years. I think that, Max, they're like New Orleans for you, Memphis for me, over the last few years. And at first, when they made the Bane trade, I think I underestimated how watered down their roster would look as a result. And now it's like Jalen Wells, Zach Edey. I love Santi Aldama. I love a lot of their depth pieces, but suddenly those guys are being asked to do a lot more. And in the West, that's just not going to cut it. And then there's the question of Ja. Like I hopefully Ja's put like the personal stuff behind him, but at this point it's like, can you stay healthy for an 100-game season playing that way? Forget 100. Let's just stick to 82. So I felt awful about it, because I've really been a fan of this Memphis core, and I'm sad about the way things have gone the last year or two. But I had Memphis at 9 and ended with Dallas at 11 and in the play-in tier.
Yeah, real quick on Sacramento. I do think they have a chance to be a sneaky good offense. Like, there's just a lot of offensive talent there between Levine, DeRozan, Sabonis, Keegan Murray. Like, there's a good chance that's like a top 10 or higher offense, but their team is absolutely directionless and they should blow it up.
Yep.
However, I do think they have a chance to be better than people are necessarily giving them credit for. Like, I'd keep them above sort of the bottom feeders discussion as well. Anyone that jumped out from sort of the play-in hopefuls tier for you, Matt, or anyone that we haven't mentioned yet?
No, I think like I said a little bit earlier that I probably have 4 teams in the bottom feeder tier, but to your point, I think Sacramento is better than the teams we're probably about to talk about. So I mean, I'll put them there. So my personal list was Memphis at 9, Dallas at 10, Sacramento at 11. I do agree with you. I think the offense will give them a solid 4. But just not a lot of two-way guys for me, not a lot of size. The rim protection and paint defense will always be a question mark with Sabonis, so I think that caps their ceiling. And again, just the Western Conference. Like, again, like I think if you move the Sacramento Kings to the Eastern Conference, like they're probably a solid play-in team for sure. But
Yeah.
in the West, I don't think it's even a question that I don't think they make the play-in at all. But if you're talking like just things breaking right, injuries, maybe the offense is better than we're even projecting it to be, sure. But I just there's to me there's no way that they actually make the postseason, but the play-in you could talk me into.
Yeah. And Drew's going to love this. I had the Blazers at 11, one spot ahead of the Kings. I just think there's a chance that they have an awesome defense and have kind of a
Sure.
Rockets from 2 years ago season, like not 2 seed Rockets, but play in sort of out of nowhere, close to 500 team, just because. I mean, the defensive grouping of Drew Holiday, Tumani Kamara, Deni Avdija, Donovan Clingan is about as good as you can find for a 4-man grouping. There's a lot of offensive questions with that, but all of that supporting hopefully a breakout year from Scoot Henderson and a lot of what's now kind of really interesting depth. I mean, you have Jeremy Grant, who's going to be fighting for a starting spot all of a sudden. You have Shaedon Sharpe, who is sort of maybe entering a bit of a make or break year, at least for what sort of his ceiling is going to be. Robert Williams, for however many games you get him, is a really valuable defensive piece as well. And then all the kind of young guys they're bringing in too, between Young Hansen and the other guys they brought in over the past few years. So I think the Blazers, I would expect them to be kind of a top 10-ish defense, and I think have the potential to be even better. And when you're that good on one end of the floor, it's hard to be that bad. So I think they've got a good chance to kind of be in the play-in race deep into the season, potentially sneak in.
Max, this means the world. I appreciate the love, but I just have a little bit too much respect for like Sacramento's ability to stay just mediocre.
Yeah.
Zach LaVine, Sabonis, Monk, everyone loves Keon Ellis. It's just like defaulting to they have vets who have more experience closing out regular season games, even if the team has no direction. So I like where we're headed in Portland, but there's just too much youth at this point in his career. I think Drew will be amazing for developing our young backcourt, but I just don't think there's enough vet savvy to get into this tier for me.
Yeah.
The Scoot Henderson jump is coming, and I still have receipts. If you've quit on Scoot Henderson, you're on the list. That's the real list that people should be tweeting about right now. And I will release it, day one disclosure. But yeah, I had Portland in the final tier, and again,
Me too.
Matt, you said it well. It's the West. Even last, like I think Portland would have been the 10 seed last year, even with their Western Conference schedule. They won enough games to be the 10 seed in the East last year.
Yeah.
So it's unfair. It sucks. I would love for our young guys to get like a taste of the play-in, but the bar is absurdly high in this conference right now.
Yeah, I think if we're going toward the bottom feeders here, which I think where we're at now, I had Portland at the top of it. I think it's just by virtue of some continuity, the talent and potential of the young guys on the roster. I love the backcourt. Denny Avdia, to me, it looks like a real guy in this league. Drew Holiday, while he will be more serving in the mentorship role, still a very, very good veteran to have. So I think he raises the floor a little bit. Donovan Clingan, one of my favorite prospects from his draft class. I'm excited to see more of him this year, and then Shaedon Sharp. So there's a lot to like in Portland. Like I know you guys are known for the coffee, so you guys have something brewing there for sure. Had to throw that in there, but yeah, I mean, I like a lot of the young guys. I just think it's a multi-year project for them. But I think if you're talking comparatively to the Western Conference teams that are left that we haven't talked about, they for sure to me have the brightest future.
Agreed. Yeah. I think there are a lot of teams. A couple of teams we've already mentioned who have a worse situation, a worse outlook than Portland, but they're probably still going to win more games in the regular season this year. So for me, this waste management tier is Portland at 12, New Orleans at 13, Phoenix at 14, which I can't believe we're here, but it's just the way things are. And Utah, a distant 15th. Just send Utah to the East for the year. But
I think that is my order too.
Same. How serendipitous that neither 13 nor 14 in our tiers has their pick this year. New Orleans and
what a great trade. I love
going to continue to be the most baffling move of the summer.
Oh my God, man.
Trading their pick to move up to draft Derek Queen, who
I like Derek Queen. I don't know if I love him that much.
Yeah, and neither Drew or I was that high on Derek Queen to begin with. And trading away what could be a very high lottery pick next year is just insane. And like, this is sort of projecting kind of medium level of health. Like if they have the Zion misses 50 games season, they could be 15 very easily. Like this is projecting a decent number of Zion games. It's a very weird team with kind of Poole and Zion,
Trey
like
Murphy.
People pencil in DeJounte Murray, but he's going to be hurt most of the year. He tore his Achilles, so he's not going to be back for a while. And even when he was there, the fit was weird. There's a lot on poor Herb Jones trying to patch up all the defensive holes between Jordan Poole and Zion. So yeah,
Yves Missi though, Max.
Yves Missi. That's true.
Missi though. The only thing I'm watching Pelicans games for.
But like, I don't see a world where the Pelicans end up 15th. I think you just toss that out there, and I'm not okay with it.
If Zion misses 50 games,
no, we still have Trey Murphy, we still have Herb Jones, Jose Alvarado, Yves Missi, Jordan Poole. Like these are real NBA players. I wasn't a fan of either pick. Forget the trade. I just was a little bit lower. I was much lower on Jeremiah Fears from where they took him, and I was a good deal lower on Queen than where they took him. But like, I see the vision with Queen. He's a really interesting player type. And I understand like swinging on the upside, because we talked earlier about like Jokic, SGA, Luka, like guys who showed some sort of potential genius early on. Like there's something magical to the way Derek Queen operates with the ball in his hands. I wasn't willing to take the swing as early as New Orleans was and, give up their pick next year. But New Orleans is another team like Sacramento in the tier before. I think there are enough vets that I don't see a path to the bottom unless they have the injury luck they had last year, which was just atrocious. And I haven't even really checked when DeJounte Murray is set to come back, but it's definitely not for a significant while.
Yeah. And then Phoenix, it was sort of hard to, with once all the dust settled, kind of wrap your head around what Phoenix is at this point.
Yeah.
They've got Booker, they've got Mark Williams. Somehow I keep forgetting they have him.
Jalen Green,
Jalen
Dylan
Green, yeah,
Brooks.
Dylan Brooks. So like maybe they're an okay offensive team. They're going to be a terrible defensive team, and I mean they're going to be motivated at least to win games because they're swapping picks with Washington this year, I think. Thanks to the Bradley Beal trade. So it's
Yikes.
it's just bad to worse in Phoenix, and like maybe they claw their way up to 12th in the West, but I really can't see them finishing much higher than that.
Yeah, like Devin Booker and Jalen Green as your starting backcourt's quite interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
Just the collective playmaking on this team is gone down the gutter. So there's that. I think if you're a Suns fan, all you really care about is watching more Ryan Dunn. Rasheer Fleming's going to be cool. Cayman Malawatch. These are the kind of names that I think Suns fans are just going to have to get used to seeing and cheering for. Mark Williams is a nice upside swing. You're welcome as a Lakers fan. By all means, have at it. But yeah, the Suns situation is sad, man. Like they needed to do it, but this is going to be a sad couple seasons. Good for Devin Booker to get paid while he could. But man, I applaud the loyalty. It just pains me because I love Devin Booker, the player, quite a bit, and I would love to see him on a contending team because I think he's legitimately very, very good, and I think he's just been so underrated because of the situation in Phoenix. So yeah, that's essentially my spiel is just free Devin Booker.
Yeah, Devin Booker, another guy who had really good PR coming out of Paris. He slotted the famous tweet, "I'll do it," like who's willing to
Yeah.
play a role on Team USA. And he played that role to a T. And there were a lot of good Devin Booker and Kevin Durant vibes coming into last year. Here we are. It's still surreal. It doesn't make sense for a player as good as Devin Booker to be on a team that looks at this set to lose so many games. I like a few of those young guys you just mentioned, like Mark Williams offensively is really enticing. He's an awesome rebounder. I like Rasheer Fleming. I really don't like Jalen Green. And I don't like Jalen Green on a team where his usage is going to go up. So
He's like a 30% guy this year, almost.
I don't know. Like this will be an interesting referendum on Devin Booker as a floor raiser. If he's really planning to stay on this team, I'm more interested to ask you guys, did you see that clip of Matt Ishbia with the and one layup?
Yes.
Yes.
That was it was better than I expected.
He played
He used to
ball.
play- he
He
used to
played
play
he played at
basketball.
Michigan State.
Yeah.
Did he
he's a
actually
real guy.
play? He was a
Yeah,
Spartan?
he's a real guy. Yeah.
He
Okay,
walked on.
he's a real guy. Yeah, I mean,
play.
there was some real force in that back down. He put his ass in that guy's face and spun baseline.
Yeah.
This is the part of the podcast that we're on, guys.
It's after hours alert, but and look, I respect on some level that he said publicly things have not been handled very well the last few years. And
Say the least.
there will be some strategic changes made, but this is where Phoenix is this year. It's very bleak, just based on like what it looked like a couple of years ago. And then, everyone's 15th seed is the Utah Jazz, who just are stacking
Sad.
young dudes and have no interest in winning.
Just God, why pay Lauri Markkanen when you did is my biggest question for them.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
It's a big year for him too, because last year I think his stock definitely took a hit after he was kind of everyone's darling 2 years ago, and then as often happens, he gets the big contract, and like Lauri Markkanen for 20 million is a lot more fun than Lauri Markkanen for like 40 to 50 million. So yeah, I mentioned earlier, I think the Jazz might have the worst conference record of all time. I don't know what that number is. I did some light Googling to try to figure it out, and I couldn't quite figure it out. So,
Yeah.
but I'm going to go ahead and say that they're like every game against the Jazz is just like the West team trying to get off of their, 5-game slide. And they're like, oh, we have the Jazz tonight.
They're
Nice.
the get right game. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited to see, does Cody Williams take a step in year 2? How do the rookies look? But that's real kind of after hours content. They're just going for AJ DeBonsa or Darren Peterson, whoever's going to be there at the top of the draft.
Yeah, I just how many more white guys can they collect? That's always a troop. That's always something to watch out for a Utah fan. I mean, look, Ace Bailey's gonna be fun. I know there was a lot of drama with that, but I think we're past that now, and he's super intriguing to me. I think like a lot of draft analysts guys, like he was the hardest one for me in the top 4 or 5 guys to kind of project out, but the situation's great. He will be able to do whatever he wants whenever he wants in Utah because no
Yeah.
one's really going to be watching. So, by all means, give him the ball and let him have at it. I hope that they free Lauri Markkanen. He'd be a very interesting piece on a conference team. Like Utah's got a lot of guys that I think can pop at some point, which makes
Hmm.
them somewhat watchable some nights. But I just think that this is a sad team, and this is going to be like everyone I think agrees. Like this is just the team that you circle on the calendar and go, okay, we're kind of struggling, but this is the game that I think we can probably get on track.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be cool to see Larry Markkinen bounce back, whoever he's playing for in a year or two. Like last year was a regression for him after his absolutely awesome offensive season 2 years ago, when it looked like he just belongs on the Thunder or one of those teams with a bevy of picks who could go and get him and compete right away. I think everyone will have their Jazz prospect of choice. For me, I'm not a big Ace Bailey guy. Walter Clayton is the reason I will watch a couple of Jazz games this year. I just want to see, can he be like, is there some star upside? Is he like the next like upperclassman we think has a certain ceiling because he's entering the NBA at 22 and doesn't have the ideal body for his position? Transcendent shooter, and I think just a really, really tough gamer. So I think they got a
Yep.
steal in him. But yeah, not a great time for Utah. It's, having picks and a bunch of young guys is not fun. Take it from a guy who complained that the Blazers were in no man's land for a while, and then raced to the bottom and into obscurity for a few years. So I would like to
Yep.
see Utah become relevant again. They do have the Boozer family relationship. Cam Boozer is another guy who's in the top of next year's draft conversation. I
Love Cam.
wonder. I wonder if Carlos wants his son to end up on the franchise where he made it big.
Yeah. That could be a good outcome. Debansa at BYU as well in their backyard. That could
Yep.
be an outcome as well. But we don't have to talk about the Jazz anymore.
Oh,
We have spent a lot of time with you, Matt. So really, really grateful for you being so generous with your time. Tell the listeners before we go just where they can find you, and listen to your content, read your content, and just sort of see what you're posting.
yeah, I mean, first and foremost, thank you guys for having me. As a Lakers specific beat writer or cover or whatever you want to call me, like I only get to really talk about the Lakers. So it's really rare when I get an opportunity to talk about the rest of the Western Conference just as a whole. So this was a lot of fun. I'm glad our lists were similar, but I'm glad we were able to disagree in the middle because I figured that's probably where it would be. I think like it's very clear who the best teams and the worst teams are in this conference. I think
Yeah.
everyone else in the middle has a very credible argument. And I'm sure people listening to this will probably listen to it and go, you know what? Like the team they had at 8 or 9, they could probably be fourth. Like I'm sure there's be a lot of discussion about that. So thank you guys for having me. And then as far as where to find me, I'm on LakersNation.com, our YouTube channel, X account, Instagram, all that stuff. You can find me personally on Instagram at Matt Peralta, and then at Twitter _ Matthew Peralta. But yeah, man, like this is fun. I love the hoops talk. Whenever you guys need a filler for summer content or the regular season, let me know.
Yeah, man.
Hell yeah. Appreciate you.
Boris Dirk.